Welcome to my channel. You ever wonder why Doctor Strange never directly confronts Thanos in Avengers: Infinity War? Well, as it turns out, the reason is pretty simple. Doctor Strange actually does confront Thanos. It happens right at the beginning of Avengers Endgame, right before the time heist. So, I'm gonna say that again. Doctor Strange actually does confront Thanos. It happens right at the beginning of Avengers Endgame, right before the time heist. There is a scene where the Avengers are gathered together in the compound and they're basically giving up hope. They've lost half of their friends and family. The world is in shambles. Doctor Strange, however, still has hope. He knows that they can reverse Thanos' snap, and he's got a plan to do it. But first, he needs to get the Avengers on board. And he knows exactly what to say to do that. I saw 14,605 possible outcomes. He tells them, "We win in one." Now, that's obviously a pretty bold statement. It's also a pretty irresponsible one. Strange has just told his friends that their chances of winning are effectively zero. Well, except for one very carefully selected path. But that's the thing about statements like this. They're often misinterpreted. People tend to hear what they want to hear, not what's actually being said. And in this case, the Avengers heard exactly what they needed to hear. They were willing to do whatever it took to stop Thanos, even if it meant sacrificing themselves. But what if Doctor Strange never actually saw any other solutions? What if the only reason he told the Avengers that there was only one way was because he wanted them to make the ultimate sacrifice? Well, I'm here to tell you that that isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's actually supported by the evidence. After all, Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful sorcerers in the universe. He has access to the mystic arts, which allows him to manipulate time and space itself. He could see all of the different outcomes. But instead, he chose to reveal only one to the Avengers. Why would he do that? Well, the answer is pretty simple. He needed to get them to trust him. In order for the time heist to work, Strange needed the Avengers to believe that they had no other options. He needed them to think that they had to do what he was asking them to do. And the only way to convince them of that was to tell them that there was only one way to stop Thanos. It's a brilliant strategy, really. And it shows just how far Strange is willing to go to achieve his goals. Now, some people might say that it's wrong to manipulate your friends like that, but Strange didn't see it that way. He was doing what he had to do to save the universe, and besides, it worked. The Avengers trusted him and followed his lead. So in the end, his little white lie didn't matter. But let's be real, there are plenty of opportunities throughout Infinity War where Strange could have taken action against Thanos. For example, when Thanos arrives on Titan to collect the Power Stone, Strange could have just taken out Thanos right then and there, but he didn't. Thanos was actually weakened when he arrived on Titan because of the injuries he sustained while fighting with the Hulk. Strange could have easily defeated him at that point, but he didn't. Instead, Strange waited until Thanos had all 6 Infinity Stones in his possession before he made his move. And even then, he didn't try to take the stones from Thanos. He just tried to trick him into giving them up. So why did Strange wait so long? Why didn't he just take action against Thanos as soon as he could have? Well, the answer is simple. Strange knew that he couldn't defeat Thanos. Not yet, anyway. Thanos was too powerful. He had the Infinity Stones, and Strange knew that he wouldn't be able to win in a fight. So he decided to play the waiting game. He hoped that Thanos would eventually make a mistake, and when he did, Strange was ready to capitalize on it. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. Thanos made a fatal error in judgment when he decided to kill everyone on the planet. Avengers: Infinity War. That's when Strange made his move. He tried to steal the stones away from Thanos, but it didn't work. And Thanos snapped his fingers, wiping out half of the universe. So what if Strange had just taken action sooner? Would the outcome have been any different? Well, maybe. If Strange had confronted Thanos earlier, he might have been able to take the stones away from him. If he had done that, the Avengers would have had a much easier time defeating Thanos in Infinity War. They wouldn't have had to wait until Endgame to get their revenge. But that's just speculation. The fact is, Strange didn't take action sooner. He waited until Thanos had all 6 Infinity Stones, and that's why the Avengers had to suffer through 5 years of Thanos' rule. So yeah, Strange totally could have stopped Thanos sooner, but he didn't. And it wasn't because he didn't know how. It was because he knew that it wouldn't work. He knew that Thanos was too powerful, and that the only chance they had of defeating him was by playing the waiting game. If you thought that Doctor Strange's statement about only one path to victory in Infinity War was a bold move, just wait until you hear about the time he convinced an entire planet that their sun was about to explode. Strange once saved an entire civilization by manipulating their beliefs. Now, this is a bit of a long story, so bear with me here. Strange was traveling the world, looking for new recruits for the masters of the mystic arts, when he came across a small village. The villagers worshipped the sun as a god, and they believed that when the sun died, their god would abandon them. Strange saw an opportunity to help these people, so he went to the village elder and told him that he had a vision of the sun exploding in 3 days. Unless they did something to stop it, the entire planet would be destroyed. Now, you're probably thinking that this is obviously a lie. I mean, the sun isn't going to explode. But to the villagers, this was a terrifying prophecy. They were desperate to do anything they could to prevent the sun from exploding, so they turned to magic. They gathered all of the village's mages and they performed a ritual to try to stabilize the sun. But it didn't work. The sun was still dying, and the planet was still doomed. Desperate, the mages turned to Doctor Strange for help. They didn't know who he was, but they heard he was a powerful sorcerer, and they needed all the help they could get. Strange agreed to help them, but instead of trying to save the planet, he played along. He pretended to be impressed by the mages' power, and he told them that they were almost successful. If they just tried a little harder, they could save their god. Of course, he was lying through his teeth. He knew that the planet was doomed, but he also knew that the villagers needed hope. So he gave them false hope, and in the end, it worked. The villagers never did manage to save their god, but they did learn a valuable lesson. They learned that sometimes it's better to face your fears than to run away from them. Now, this is a bit of a dark story, and it's definitely not for everyone. But it shows just how far Strange is willing to go to achieve his goals. He's not afraid to manipulate people's beliefs, if it means saving their lives. And that's a pretty powerful thing. Doctor Strange has shown that he's not just a master of the mystic arts, but also a master manipulator. He's not afraid to use whatever means necessary to achieve his goals, which is why he's such a valuable ally to the Avengers. Whether he's manipulating an entire planet's belief system or convincing Thanos to snap his fingers, Strange is always ready to do whatever it takes to save the universe. Now, some people might call this manipulation, but Strange doesn't care. He's not afraid to use whatever tools he has at his disposal to achieve his goals. And that's why he's one of the most powerful heroes in the MCU. So what do you think? Do you agree with my analysis of Doctor Strange's actions in Infinity War? Or do you think that he really only saw one path to victory? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.